Alright, so welcome to part 1 of this Bitcoin on-chain analysis course where we discuss the topic of network health. To put this in context, so you'll remember the 3-part pyramid framework from ARK Invest that we discussed earlier. So this is layer 1 of that pyramid, network health. And specifically in this section, we're going to look at 3 topics. First of all, we'll talk about the Bitcoin monetary policy and how to check that this policy is still intact. And if it isn't, then Bitcoin is in trouble. So that's the topic of this video that you're watching right now. Then we'll explore the topic of network security in the following video. And finally, we'll discuss network usage and network growth in a third video. So all of these are fundamental metrics that you need to keep an eye on. I don't personally look at these on a daily basis. They are mid to long-term metrics. I look at them weekly, more or less. And these metrics will give you the long-term view and the long-term success and price appreciation of Bitcoin. Intuitively, you'll understand that if Bitcoin continues to deliver on its hard asset store value property, and if Bitcoin continues to grow and gain millions of new users, then it's really easy to understand that the price would go up. So if you're invested in Bitcoin, you need to make sure that the network is healthy and ticking along, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. And if you're new to Bitcoin, this section is going to be very important for you. If you're already quite experienced, you might find that you know some of this already, but I encourage you to watch the entire section as I'm going to debunk quite a few misconceptions. Alright, so let's start with Bitcoin's monetary policy. So what does this fancy word mean? Well, essentially the Bitcoin monetary policy refers to the supply of Bitcoin, how many Bitcoins exist today, and how many are created on a daily basis and at what speed. And effectively, Bitcoin's monetary policy is one of its core benefits. This is because there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and the fact that the supply has a hard cap is, believe it or not, actually quite unique. So you could argue that Bitcoin is the only asset in the world that has a truly finite supply. So let's take some examples. Let's take, for example, a precious metal like gold. Well, it's scarce, it's difficult, and it's expensive to mine. But as the prices increases, then miners have more incentive to dig out more gold. Other assets, for example, real estate, are also scarce, but there's plenty of land to build on, and so scarcity is artificial. It's really down to preferences, like where do people want to live, and this can change, and also planning restrictions, which can also change. But Bitcoin is truly scarce, and that's the novelty. So not only is Bitcoin limited in supply, but the supply can also be verified. So you can run your own node and you could check how many Bitcoin exist at any time. So again, this is very powerful and it's also unique. The supply of other assets is often impossible to audit exactly. For example, nobody knows exactly for sure how much gold has been mined, how much gold exists on Earth right now. So let's get into it. So this graph from Glassnode illustrates the supply of Bitcoin through time since the beginning of the project in 2008. So the supply is in orange and the Bitcoin price is plotted in black using a log scale. So you'll notice a couple things. You'll notice that the supply in orange increases with time. It started at 0 and is now at roughly 18.7 million. You'll also notice that the rate of growth of the supply decreases with time. So the rate of growth of the orange line is slowing down. The line is flattening out. And this is due to the halving effect. Every 4 years or so, the output of miners decreases by 50%. The supply curve is slowly converging towards 21 million, but every 4 years, the curve flattens out a bit more. And so it is estimated that the last Bitcoin will be mined around the year 2140. That's in roughly 119 years, a very long time. So as of end of May 2021, as I record this video, 18.71 million Bitcoin have been mined. And so there's 2.29 million Bitcoin still to be mined over the next 119 years. All right, so how is this useful for you? Well, this is the most fundamental health metric for the Bitcoin network. As long as the supply of Bitcoin continues on this predetermined path, we can all rest assured that the integrity of Bitcoin's monetary policy, its core value proposition, is intact, and that is a very important thing indeed. So let's talk about issuance. The growth in supply is effectively linked to new Bitcoin being mined on a daily basis. So the graph here shows how many new Bitcoin are mined daily. The orange line is the daily issuance, and the Bitcoin price is plotted in black. You'll see on the bottom right that at the moment, about 900 Bitcoin are created every single day. And in the phase prior to that, so before May 2020, twice as many Bitcoin were mined every day, about 1,800. And again, double that amount during the phase before that. So you'll notice that this is also an average, hence the dotted red line. The exact number varies from day to day, and this is because the speed at which a block is mined depends on how much hash rate miners have connected to the network. If there's a lot of hash rate, then a block can be mined faster than 10 minutes. But the network is set up in a very clever way. Every 2 weeks, the network recalibrates. And so if blocks are getting solved faster than 10 minutes on average, the mining difficulty increases. And so blocks are harder to mine and take longer to mine. And this converges the average block time back to 10 minutes. So it's a very, very clever system. What's also interesting is that the volatility in the daily issuance seems to reduce at each phase. In the beginning, it seems that miners were more sporadic in their efforts and hash rate was volatile. And as the industry has matured, hash rate has increased and stabilized, and the issuance volatility has reduced. All right, so how is this useful for you? Well, look, looking at the issuance of new coins is like checking up on a patient's heartbeat. It shouldn't deviate from the expected rhythm unless something is really broken. Now let's talk about inflation. So we've seen that we know what the issuance rate is and the existing supply of Bitcoin at any time. And so this helps us calculate the inflation rate in the system. And to do that, it's very simple. So you annualize the daily issuance. So right now it's 900 Bitcoin per day multiplied by 365 days per year. And then you divide by the existing supply, 18.71 million. And so you get about 1.8% inflation per year. So that inflation rate today is 1%, and it's very low compared to other, to fiat currencies or to commodities. At the next halving event in 2024, that inflation rate is going to be half as much, so less than 1%. So why do we care? Well, from an investor's perspective, it's a very important metric because you can start comparing the inflation rate of Bitcoin to other assets and understand which one is getting debased at the slowest rate. And this is where the concept of hard money comes into play. It's very attractive to own something which is truly scarce and isn't getting inflated away each year. And as an investor, it's also very reassuring that I can easily check up on the supply and the issuance of the network at any time without relying on the third party. If this inflation rate was to suddenly spike beyond the expected level, so beyond 900 Bitcoin per day, at the moment, then that would mean something is fundamentally broken at the very core of the network and you should get out immediately. Now, of course, that's an extreme scenario and it shouldn't happen, and for the past 12 years, everything has been on track. All right, so that wraps up our discussion on the integrity of the monetary policy. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. Otherwise, let's move on to the next topic, which is network security.